everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. It is Monday, December 8th. We're starting a new week. There's a lot going on. How you feeling, Rob?
I'm doing well, and everyone grab your Denver tickets because what's nice about small rooms is you can sell them out. So they'll be sold out, and I'm increasing ticket prices too this week. So grab them while you can.
All right, hell yeah! Go see Robbie the Fire Bernstein out in Denver, one of the best comedy towns in this country of ours. And then me and oh yeah, there you go.
I got two gigs. Just go to my website, robbernsteincomedy.com. Check out the Run Your Mouth podcast. Do all those things. Like, subscribe, send me money, nudes, whatever you want. Just be gracious. It's the holiday season.
That is true. That was a good pitch there, Rob. I like you threw in the holiday guilt trip at the end for your nudes. And then don't forget, I'm off the road for the rest of the year, but January we will be in Philadelphia. I know we got a bunch of gigs coming up, and we got Key West, we got Portland, Oregon, comicdavesmith.com. Me and Rob will be traveling all over the country next year, bringing our comedy to this sad, sad world. Okay, so for today, I did want to, if you guys are in the live chat, if you want to get questions in, we'll try to answer a couple there. If you want to be a part of the live chat, you got to sign up over at partoftheproblem.com. But there's a few things that I wanted to talk about. I did want to open the show with this clip that I saw. Bill Maher had Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks on his podcast. Club Random, I believe, is the name of his podcast. And it was they got into this argument, which I have not watched the whole thing, but I did see this clip. When I heard she was on the show, immediately you were like, oh, well, I bet they're going to fight about Israel and wars in the Middle East and stuff like that. And then you assume probably they'll like agree about like the excesses of wokeism or you know, the new leftism or something like that. But there was there's one clip that I saw going around, and I just thought it kind of touched on a dynamic that's very interesting. It was interesting, and look, I'm being completely honest, a little bit frustrating for me to watch it because there's like it's almost like, look, I really like Anna Kasparian, and I hold Bill Maher in high regard in many ways for, you know, the influence he's had on me, but you know, you're watching like a liberal Zionist and a leftist anti-Zionist like debate the issue. And, you know, from our perspective, I'm just like, you guys are all getting it wrong. So why don't we jump in here and kind of correct the record? And to be fair, Anna is much more on the right side of the broader issue, I personally believe. But anyway, let's play this clip and let's give our thoughts on it.
If you had to live in the Middle East, so tomorrow, Anna, you got to go live in the Middle East, where would you live? You can pick one city, any city. You can, you know, as far away as, say, Pakistan. You could live in Karachi. You could live in Cairo. You could live in Amman, Jordan. You seem to love Lebanon. I mean, Beirut's nice when the bombing's not happening and the assassinations have stopped. Or you could live in Syria. I hear that's wonderful in the summer.
Well, we now have Al-Qaeda terrorists leading Syria.
Or the Houthis, I'm sure, would make room for you.
Yeah.
Tel Aviv, or the West Bank, Ramallah, I think is wonderful for like a little, it's in the fall, it gets lovely. Where would you live? What city would you live in?
Well,
where do you think you'd be comfortable in that dress?
I'm sure it would not be comfortable in this dress in any of the various Middle Eastern countries that have been destabilized by
you're not really blaming it on Whitey.
Listen.
Are you? You're blaming Islam on Whitey?
I'm not blaming Islam on Whitey.
What you're saying is we destabilized. That's why you can't wear that dress?
Did we not destabilize?
Wait a second.
We were funding terrorist organizations in Syria during the Syrian civil war, starting under the Obama administration.
That's why
Did that not destabilize Syria?
No, what's destabilized?
There's a literal Al-Qaeda terrorist.
We're talking about your dress. Why?
It looks good. I know it looks good.
You're saying you can't wear that dress in Syria because of Whitey destabilizing?
I didn't say that.
Okay, that's
what it said. Okay,
okay, great.
But the United States did destabilize various Middle Eastern countries. Are you going to deny that?
I asked about the dress, and you went right to destabilize. So is that why you couldn't wear that dress? Why couldn't you wear that dress? Why couldn't you walk down?
You want me to talk about jihadism and Islam, but like...
Why won't you?
Listen...
Why won't you?
I mean,
why won't Why?
I don't believe in jihadism, which is why I'm furious
well,
the United States just had a freaking Al Qaeda terrorist in the White House.
It's not just jihadism that is preventing you from wearing that dress. Are you saying every Muslim is a jihad? I don't think they are.
Bill.
Okay, why can't you wear that dress?
Let's focus for a second.
No, you won't answer this question.
All right. So, Rob, seeing this, I bet you could guess what just frustrates me about all of this, right? Which is that it's like they're just both, first of all, they're both talking past each other. And then second of all, it's like, I don't know, dude. I don't exactly know how to say this, right? But okay, first of all, Bill, and I just honestly don't know enough to know this for 100% sure, but like I do know enough to go, Bill Maher's not as correct as he thinks he is. Like there are, like, I don't know, but like I've seen pictures of girls in Tehran wearing mini skirts. Now they're doing it like in defiance of their government. And I'm not denying that like Iran's government could crack down on that at some moment and not do it. But like, I actually don't think it's completely accurate that like there are no Muslim cities anywhere where you could wear this dress. But regardless of any of that, the dynamic is that something about kind of like leftist worldview, and I think this is because they're somewhat fundamentally collectivist, is that you can't just go like, look, is it true that American intervention and destabilizing of the Middle East has made these problems worse in a lot of areas? Undeniably. Now, I don't know, I don't know if Anna would have felt comfortable wearing that dress in Damascus, but she would have felt a lot more comfortable wearing that dress in Damascus 15 years ago than she would today, because we made the situation much worse. So like, there's that element to it, but also, guys, you don't have to pretend there's no problems in the Muslim world or take full responsibility for the problems in the Muslim world and say that everything is all America's fault or anything like that, to just go, hey man, but that's not really the relevant question here. The relevant question here is, what are we doing in this situation? Are we making it much worse than it otherwise would be? Yes or no? And so there's like this, the thing that's frustrating is that, and then I'll stop and let you go before I say any more on this. But it's like there's this dynamic where people on Bill Maher's side, the people who are really trying to defend Israel and critique Islam, they fall back to all of these broader critiques of Islam as a distraction from the critique of like, yeah, but what about what our own government has done and the governments that you are defending and supporting? What about what they've done in this region as well? And then there's a tendency on the part of like the leftists who agree with me about all the terrible shit that America and Israel's done to the Muslim world, who then feel they have a need to pretend that there are no problems in the Muslim world that are outside of what we believe it. You know what I'm saying? And like, it's like, but obviously neither one of those positions is correct. And I think Anna would be coming from a stronger position here if she'd just admit, oh yeah, I probably wouldn't be able to wear this dress in a lot of parts of the Muslim world. And I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. However, I'm not going to lecture everybody else about what they're wrong about when what we're wrong about is genocide. Like, you just bite the bullet. It's okay. You can admit that there also are problems with other people. Anyway, your thoughts, Rob?
I think that's fair, that she could have just said, yeah, I wouldn't want to move there and be wearing this dress, but that doesn't mean that we should bomb them and make their regions worse, pretending that there will then be democracy. And with that said, I'm sure the destabilization in the region has made areas like, I don't know, Iran 1960s. Didn't people just dress however? Or like Egypt before the Muslim Brotherhood? I mean, I don't know. What was that like? I think you can just go to Dubai and hang out now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, you know, exactly. Again, like, I don't know how much do these governments crack down on their own people. I mean, I think tourists could probably go to Dubai or go, you know what I mean, to like major cities over there and have no problem doing whatever they want to. Can the locals really dress however they want to? I don't know exactly. But again, the point is that that's just a distraction. That's not the main issue right now. Like when we're talking about this in politics, we're talking about policy, what policy we wish to see our government implementing. And you know, it's like the thing I guess that's frustrating to me, right, is that the Bill Maher argument, it's like, hey, look, dude, what's actually on the table and what's being like, say, debated would be issues of like, should we have fought the terror wars? Should we be so intervened in this part of should we intervene so much in this part of the world? Should we be supporting Israel as they destroy the Gaza Strip? Is Israel justified in what they're doing? Like all of these, should we have the former leader of Al Qaeda or the former emir of Al Qaeda in Syria to the White House? Should we, like, these are the questions. Has there ever been a debate, Rob, where anyone was going, hey, Rob, should we repeal the Enlightenment and reject all of Western civilization and instead embrace Muslim theocracy? Like, is anybody having that debate? Like, what? Yes, obviously, there are things they do in that part of the world that are not in our tradition, that are not that do not reflect our values as a society. Like, okay, yes, there's a lot of that, but that's not what the debate's over. Nobody's saying like, in other words, it's on the table. If we have another bill coming up in Congress to send another $10 billion to Israel in weapons so they can continue this war, the option on the table is you could vote yes or no for that, right? Like, that's what our congressman can do. Nobody is suggesting anywhere in the realm of possibilities is that, instead of her residence in Los Angeles, Anna Kasparian might have to go to Kuwait and live her life that, like, that's just not on the table. And so, like, it's fine to have conversations about that, but what ends up happening is that they try to have conversations about that, so we're not talking about this very real latest proposal and policy that's going into action, which is actually what the fight is about, if that makes sense. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is The Wellness Company. Did you know that about 80% of the world's ivermectin supply comes from Asia, but not at The Wellness Company? Introducing American-made ivermectin, safe, trusted, tested, and produced locally in Florida. Ivermectin has been prescribed globally for more than 30 years. It even earned a Nobel Prize in medicine for its proven ability to eliminate parasites. And research has indicated that this drug can help with things from rosacea, arthritis, even cancer. Most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet for 12 milligrams or less, but the Wellness Company is offering a higher 18 milligram dose for just $3.50 a tablet. So you'll get a 6-month supply of 84 tablets at an unbeatable price.
Yep, she should have just said yes and see where Bill Maher was going with it. Sure.
Dude, there's this great clip that Scott Horton had. I think the Mises Caucus YouTube page put it up as a clip a while ago. But like where he laid it out very well, where he was basically just he went through all the problems in the Middle East, because he was like on a panel where people were talking about that. And they're like, the Muslims are whatever, it's a clash of civilizations, and these are how powerful. And so he just goes through the list. I forget the exact list, but it was something like, he was like, he goes, oh my God. He goes, there's all types of problems in the Muslim world. He was like, do you know, like the there's female genital mutilation in Kurdistan, and then there's he goes, the freedom of religion in Pakistan is like a disgrace. They execute people for leaving the Muslim faith, and in Saudi Arabia they prosecute people for witchcraft. You know what I mean? Like, they have culture police. They cut off the hands of people who steal. And he goes, and that's the country we prop up, our biggest trading partner in the region, Saudi Arabia, does all this shit. And he goes through, and then at the end of it, he's like, but here's the thing: the worst part about Somalia is America's war there. And the worst part about Iraq and Libya and Syria and Yemen, the worst part about all those countries were America's war there. And so what do we say? You're going to sit here, and I think his exact words were something like, he goes, we're going to lecture them for stoning a woman to death when we'll drop a Hellfire missile on her car. Like, what position are we? So essentially, like, even if you wanted to be judgmental of Muslim culture or Muslim societies, look at the position you're in now, Bill Maher. Who the hell are you to lecture anybody? Because you support what Israel's doing to Gaza, which is 1,000 times worse than any of that shit. That's 1,000 times worse than like saying a woman's got to put on a longer dress. So what are you talking about here? And then the thing is, for the other side, you just don't have to, like I say, you don't have to pretend that all of this is America's fault or all of this is Israel's fault. And you can also admit that, like, yeah, you know, that's if the thing is, hey, which essentially is what Bill Maher's point is, right? If the thing is you want to go, hey, we're over here on this side of the Enlightenment, and you guys are over here on the wrong side of the Enlightenment. And like, you guys need to come over to this side of the Enlightenment. That, in a vacuum, Rob, would be a totally reasonable position to have, right? But then the thing is, if you're sitting there saying that, and then I keep bombing you back into the Stone Age and propping up the most radical Islamist factions within each one of these fights, then, not in a vacuum, I'm an asshole to sit over here and say, hey, just get over onto this side of the Stone Age. It's like lecturing like slaves for having a bad culture or something like that. Well, like, well, why don't you free them and then give them a chance to start building something? Goddamn. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it checks out to me, and I would have loved it if she just said yes to see what is Bill Maher's argument. So is it that we need to be supporting Israel because they're the only democracy in the region, of which I guess you can go there and wear dresses like that, which you can, assuming you're not, I guess, from Palestine and you can get in. But if you're an American, I guess you want to go over there and wear a dress, you can go wear a dress in Israel.
If you're a Jewish American, I believe it's your natural right, according to Zionism, to go wear a dress in Israel. It's not. If your grandmother grew up in Israel and was ethnically cleansed into Gaza, you have no right to go to Israel. But if you're like a Jewish girl from Brooklyn, you have the natural right to go wear a dress in Israel, I believe.
But it's kind of an odd American policy. So are we going to give large sums of U.S. money to other areas that will allow women to wear dresses in public? Is that like chief Western value? And how much money are we supposed to spend on the cause of propping up governments that allow women to wear dresses? Why is that? Like, is that the most important foreign policy? Or is he defending the wars that all these other regions, they're bad, so we got to go and make them worse to punish them for not allowing women to wear dresses? So she should have just said yes, and then it would have been fun to see what exactly Bill Maher is advocating for on the basis of where women can wear dresses.
Yeah, right. Well, it's what it always seems to be is like they're kind of like working backward from their conclusion. So it's like, well, we support Israel and we don't support the Muslims. Okay, well, what's better about Israel than the Muslim countries? And you go to, well, okay, gays can get married, women can wear mini skirts. There's what, you know, like whatever the thing is. It's like, yeah, but was that ever what the fight was over? I mean, like, it's just, you know, okay. And then if you're gonna say, which essentially is Bill Maher's argument, Rob, like what you said, that is his argument. It's like they're on team Western civilization, so we should be on team Israel. Like, this is a class of civilizations, and we prefer. Well, okay, that. Even if you want to accept that logic, I mean, I don't accept that it's a given that, like, if a civilization is more like us, therefore we should be giving them billions of dollars or weapons or something like that. But like, if you want to say that about Israel, you go, well, they're on board with this whole Western civilization thing. You go, okay, but then you'd also have to say, what is this whole Western civilization thing? Like, really describe for me what they're on board with. Like, is it really like gay people can get married or something like that there, which I don't even know. Can gay people get married in Israel? I actually thought they were pretty strict on that. But there's certainly lots of like gay bars and stuff like that in Israel. It's like, okay, so is that the deal now? That means, you know, and like, I don't know, how far would you take that? Like, but if you're saying that, it's like, okay, but then at the same time, you'd also have to go, look, being a Jewish state isn't exactly in line with Western values, right? That's not like American values. We don't have any, it's not like we're a Christian state and they're a Jewish state. Like, we don't do that. We have a separation of church and state. We don't like identify as like one, and we certainly wouldn't ever like with a minority who's not Jewish in Israel. Like, we wouldn't just go, oh, we're a white country because there's more of us than the black people, and if they don't like being in a white country, that's too bad. Like, we're not like that. We also don't militarily occupy our neighbors. We also don't, you know what I'm saying? So like, if the standard is Western civilization, then forgive me, because you're opening up a standard which allows me to criticize Israel when they clearly violate the fundamental foundational pillars of Western civilization. But again, that's not really the point. Look, I'll say this, dude. Bill Maher, I saw a clip where he said, like, I think it was a few weeks ago or something like that, where he said, he was like, look, I'm down to have people on my podcast who I disagree with on this shit. And he said, I think he said at one point, like, not Nick Fuentes. I wouldn't have him on or something. So that there's the line. So I don't know. The line is somewhere between Anna Kasparian is okay. Nick Fuentes is not okay. Let's test it with me. Why don't Bill Maher should have me on the podcast and not even the show? I don't want to do real time. I want to do the Club Random. I want to talk to Bill Maher because, or he could come on this show because I believe I can change him. I believe I can change. I think I could convince him that I'm right about this. Bill Maher, as I've told you this before, Bill Maher had a huge impact on me. I found Bill Maher in the 90s. I loved Politically Incorrect. I thought being like the political shit talking comedian, I thought it was like the goddamn coolest thing in the world. Had a huge impact on why I ultimately became this thing. I would love to sit down and actually like discuss this shit with him. I know.
Do you think you can actually convince him that it's not a Western value to have people of other religions on the other side of walls and not allowed into your society so that you can bomb them? I mean, are you able to make that argument, Dave?
I think I could get through to him, bro. Really think I could. By the way, here, just to get in more trouble, here, let me say something that'll put me in the Nick Fuentes category so Bill Maher won't ever have me on. But I do think there's something particularly funny just in the current moment. And again, let me preface this by saying, I am not suggesting that we should live in a culture where Anna Kasparian can't wear a revealing dress somewhere, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But isn't it a funny thing, just like in the current moment that we're living in? And I got to say, I think because Bill Maher, and I really don't mean this to be like too insulting, but just as a matter of description, Bill Maher is like a 70-year-old childless multimillionaire. And that just is a different place to be in life. But like for the moment we're living in right now, right, Rob? You have second wave feminism sweep in the 60s. In the 70s, women in large droves went into the workforce, right? We now look around 40 years later, 50 years later, and almost no Western like white country has a sustainable birth rate. Like literally, like we're being bred out of existence because we're not having enough kids. Kids are being raised in broken homes all over the place. People are having kids later in life. Less people are having kids at all in life. There's more broken families than ever before. There's also like kind of all types of like cultural degeneracy that's just been sweeping the Western world. And it's interesting in that dynamic for your biggest, like complaint about another society being that like they keep their women in line over there. It's just a little, it's just, I don't know, like I'm not saying however you feel about that. And personally, obviously I'm American. I'm not like advocating for some other mod. I can't really imagine even living in a world where like a woman, it's just, it does ring with a little bit of like, it's almost like you're going like with like Bill Maher's argument is like, they don't even trans their boys over there. Can you believe that, Rob? These Muslims, they don't even cut the penises off their sons and turn them into daughters. So that's how crazy it is. In fact, actually, I think they do that. But that's not the point. The point is just like, it is a little bit weird when you look at kind of like, by almost any standard, the whole like gender equality thing has not worked out that well. I don't say that as somebody who like wanted to come to that conclusion as much as it is just like empirically look at it, dude. If if it's hard, sometimes it's hard to like boil down like terms like even basic little things like if you say this worked out better, you're like, well, what do you mean by better? What is the measure of that? But as far as human existence goes, it's probably hard to find a more foundational like version of better than are you reproducing? Like, I mean, that's how the thing keeps going, right? Is if we keep having more kids, not saying every single person has to have kids, but like enough of us do that there's more people in the future. And when you're like, I don't know. It's just kind of hard to look at that and then go like, oh yeah, this has worked out very well. Just a thought.
I got no comments on procreating.
Yeah, there you go. Don't worry. We'll get you doing it. Okay. Let's move on to some of the Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff, because I did find this to be very interesting, Rob. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, you know, we talked about a bit on the show, a very weird situation that we were kind of speculating about. Marjorie Taylor Greene wins this huge fight with the president, and then upon winning it, announces that she's resigning. What did you, we could get into some of these clips, but are there any takeaway that you had from watching that interview?
Well, I had said it seemed that clearly she was threatened in some way. My speculations was that it was more from the deep state, and that if she was going away, it was most likely to be quiet. And she is not. She is full on spicy, going rogue, being like, all right, listen, I'm not going to stay in Congress so that you guys can keep giving me shit, but I will continue running my mouth and saying all the horrors of this Donald Trump administration. So I was rather surprised. Just in terms of giving her credit, she seemed like such a fighter that if she was stepping down after winning, the only reason why that made sense was that she was threatened. And now it's surprising to me that she's continuing to be combative on the way out. I would have thought that she was going silently.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. And her answer is just like insufficient. Like you're like, so, because I gotta say, like, I don't know, man, if you run for office and you get elected, you are kind of obligated to serve out your term. Like, now I'm not saying that like nothing could come up, you know, there could be a health issue or a family issue. There could be something where you have to, but like to just kind of go, I'm not going to take it anymore is like, well, but you're telling me there's this tremendous corruption. You were just helping the fight to expose this corruption. Don't you kind of owe it to your constituency to like see this thing through? None of it makes sense to me. And then I got to say, it does make you wonder, Rob, with the timing. They said it was like just for when she got her pension or something like that. And like, look, I'm not trying to be shitty because Marjorie Taylor Greene has being completely honest, she's somebody who I never took particularly seriously for various reasons, but I will give her credit for being on the right side of a lot of really important issues and actually fighting for those issues. But it does, to me, it's hard in a situation like this because, you know, I'm not trying to speculate about people's motives too much. It's impossible to never do that. But in a situation like this, where it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's hard to not go like, oh, so are you just going to go make like millions of dollars being like a podcaster or something like that? Is that kind of the, you know what I mean? Or like whatever, like, is it just, hey, you got the pension there. Now let's go find a lucrative position, like kind of being that America First lady. I don't know. But anyway, regardless of that, there were some interesting things she said.
I mean, she clearly picked an end date that includes allowing her to get her pension. Right. With that said, I think she has family money from like construction business that went up tremendously in value. The numbers come in my head. It's something between $25 and $50 million. And she's also made like $20 million in the stock market since she's in office. I think her pension is only like, I think the total value of it's like $250,000. Like it's maybe $20K a year. Now, I don't know if that's
not much.
Yeah, I don't know if like the health, I might not be right about all these numbers. The health benefits might be convenient enough that you stay on like whatever the congressional like health benefits are for life, that it just
that's where you get the good shit. The congressional health benefits, they give you like fetuses to eat in the morning and stuff like that. Yeah,
and you also just don't have to deal with getting health care. I don't know if that's if you have that for life for single terms in Congress, but the actual she clearly did stick around for the pension, but the dollar tag is almost not worth the criticism
right.
At that level of wealth. So I don't understand that decision either.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, let's get into some of these clips. Marjorie Taylor Greene on 60 Minutes.
It wasn't a decision that I came to lightly, but it was a very important decision for myself and also for my family.
It was sudden.
It was sudden, but a lot of things changed. I stood for women who were raped when they were 14 years old. And the president that I fought for 5 years called me a traitor for that. And so that changed the landscape of things.
So I'm going to ask you straight out.
Mhm.
Did you surrender? Did Donald Trump run you out of town?
No, not at all. Actually, Leslie, it's more like this is I said in my statement, I will be no one's battered wife, and I meant it. And I won't allow the system to abuse me anymore.
You really feel abused. You know, he did come after you pretty hard. He called you a lunatic, I'm quoting. He said all she does is complain, complain, complain in caps, and then he called you a traitor. So he hit you, whacked you.
Yes, he did this in the same time span where President Trump brought in the Al-Qaeda leader that was wanted by the U.S. government, who is now the president of Syria. Then within a week, he brought in the Crown Prince, MBS, who murdered an American journalist. And then he brought in the newly elected Democrat socialist mayor of New York. That was the time span that he called me a traitor.
Oof. All right. So there's a few things there. Number one, I think that was about as effective and a scathing attack on Donald Trump from the right that I've ever seen. Just like in a little short clip there that like, holy, because like there was this, dude, her line about just saying on its face that I was standing up for the victims of rape, some of whom were 14 when they were raped, and my president called me a traitor for it. Like, dude, put that on a fucking bumper sticker somewhere, man. Like that is just, that is the, like perhaps the most effective like right-wing critique of Donald Trump I've ever seen. And then her adding in the thing at the end about how like she's having, and like I think it actually, and I hate socialism as much as anyone, it was a little unfair to lump Mamdani in with those other guys if we're being completely honest. Like, yes, he's running on some very left-wing populist positions in New York City, but like he's an elected mayor of the biggest city in the country. It's a little, but yes, Donald Trump hosted the Emir of Al-Qaeda in Syria at the goddamn White House. I mean, talk about like, you know, listen, I'm someone who I don't think we ever should have fought any of the terror wars. I also wouldn't like exactly spit on every soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice by hosting Al-Qaeda in the White House. But, and the, you know, the point about the Saudis is a fair point too. But so all of that, like scathing critique. But then Rob, I also got to say the other point in there, and this is the thing that like doesn't add up. She, and this thing would be so much more effective if there wasn't that element in there. But this, her answer about being run out was incoherent. She goes, I'm not anybody's battered wife. And then in the next sentence, she's going, I was so abused. Literally her words. It's like, if you were so abused, then your own analogy is that you're a battered wife. And if you're leaving because of the abuse, then how do you not say that he abused you and ran you out? Like, I just don't, this is the thing, right? And I guess maybe we could transition back into, you know, this, or not transition back into, but like just playing off of the thing we were talking about with feminism or whatever. There is this strange dynamic sometimes where, like, I know this personally, like men, you know, like it's a little bit different, like the way we argue with women versus the way we argue with men. With like when you're arguing with a man, you kind of don't feel any need to like hold back sometimes, whereas with a woman, you're like, oh, I don't want to be like mean to her, something like that. And I almost feel a sense of that with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But like, I don't know, dude, like once you start, when you run for elected office and you win elected office, and then it's like, okay, well now we gotta treat everybody the same way. And so essentially if your brand is that like, I'm this fighter, but then you're saying what? You got insulted by the president and so you're leaving over that? It really does to me undercut the like, I'm a fighter thing. I don't know. Any thoughts, Rob?
You're right. It's just it's completely inconsistent, and it's not a great. It's just not a cohesive story for why you're stepping down. I got bullied out of it, but I'm not going to play the bully victim. But then you left, so you kind of folded. So
yes,
it doesn't add up. But then also
Rob,
the fact
I'm not gonna sit here and let you bully me. But here is my lunch money if you want it. Like you could take it and go get lunch with it and whatever. I'm not going to fight you for it, but like, I'm not going to be the guy who just gets bullied into giving up his money. So here it is. Like, it's that. What is this? No, then you are the guy who's getting bullied out of his lunch money. What do you want me to say? Sorry.
She'd be better off just saying the system's so corrupt, I'm just not participating in this thing anymore. I did my best to try and fix it. And
I got the Epstein files out. That was the thing I wanted to do. That's it. But yeah,
this was the
she'd be better
victory,
off saying that.
and there's nothing more that I can do, but I will continue to speak to truth and living a prosperous and fulfilling life with my family. But the fact that she's speaking to, Donald Trump called me a traitor for exposing this and then took these actions. So it's shocking to me that she's going out swinging after stepping down. But I guess God bless that she hasn't been fully silenced.
Yeah, I just don't. There's something else to this story that we're missing here. Like, so there's just something isn't adding up, and I don't know what it is, but it is. But also, I got to go. It's like, look, like, if you, the thing is like, it's like an if-then statement, okay? So if you are this courageous fighter, and if you rallied for the president of the United States of America and you supported him and you helped get this guy elected, and then once in there, you stood up for a 14-year-old who was raped and he called you a traitor for it, then, like, if all of that, then isn't the conclusion that you're not going anywhere and you're going to say that every single day until every American has heard that statement, until every American has heard, I stood up for a 14-year-old girl who was a victim of rape and my president called me a traitor for it. Every day I'm going to say that for the rest of my, term. Just seems like the obvious conclusion if what you're saying is true. All right, let's go to the next clip.
I'm going to ask you about this almost solid support he has among Republicans in Congress. Is there in that support fear? Does the support come about because they're afraid that they'll get death threats?
I think they're terrified to step out of line and get a nasty Truth Social post on them. Yes.
And they're watching what happened to you.
Yes.
Behind the scenes, do they talk differently?
Yes.
How?
Oh, it would shock people.
Well, let's shock people.
Okay. I watched many of my colleagues go from making fun of him, making fun of how he talks, making fun of me constantly for supporting him, to when he won the primary in 2024, they all started, excuse my language, Leslie, kissing his ass and decided to put on a MAGA hat for the first time.
I'm going to ask you about.
So I thought was an interesting little moment there. Of course, this is something that we all kind of know, right? Everybody knows that the entire political establishment had nothing but contempt for Donald Trump. And then once he won, they all came over to kiss it. I mean, all you'd have to see, right, is Mitt Romney's speech in the 2016 primary when he said we could find any other candidate, but not Donald Trump. Which really was a historic moment, like the previous Republican nominee coming out and saying, we cannot support this nominee. And then his entire voting base going, we don't care what you say, we're supporting him. And then he talked about how Donald Trump was a unique threat to democracy and how he was a Hitlerian figure promoting fascism. And then as soon as he won the election, he went to go meet with him to try to beg for the Secretary of State job. So like we know they're all like that. I guess, though, once again, the thing that's just kind of hard to ignore here is that if Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that everybody's intimidated about Donald Trump because they're afraid to get the treatment that I got, well, the fact that you're running away doesn't really seem to be helping that at all. Like it's kind of hard, back to the bully analogy, because, I said lunch money because that's essentially what Trump is a bully. But then, like if you brand him a bully and you brand yourself a fighter, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, look, he's bullying all these other people. All these people are scared. And then it's like, oh, but you're leaving over it. So like, if you're saying you're leaving because you can't take the abuse anymore, then I guess it kind of makes sense that the other people don't want this abuse that would make them leave.
It would be fun and more scandalous if she went full crazy and was like, dude, I've hung out with Mike Johnson and he thinks Trump's the world's biggest idiot, but he's stuck with him. The reality is you're really just describing having a boss at a job that's the way it is you
Yeah.
gotta play nice publicly, you gotta praise the guy, and then you get together at a company meeting and you're like, fuck this guy. That's called every job that's ever existed in the history of jobs. But it would be fun and more scandalous if she named names and actually ratted people out for statements they've made at parties about Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Which she still
disagree
might.
with you.
This lady's full crazy, and she's still got her fighter spirit. So we'll see what other kind of crazy shit she says when she leaves.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. All right, here, let's play the next clip. Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Here, yep, there you go. You're right, Natalie.
About the Epstein files, and he was extremely angry at me that I had signed the discharge petition to release the files. I fully believe that those women deserve everything they're asking. They're asking for all of it to come out. They deserve it. And he was furious with me.
What did he say?
He said that it was going to hurt people. I had asked him, these women are the ones that were hurt. They were raped at 14. They were raped at 16. I watched them stand in front of the press trembling, their bodies shaking as they were telling their stories, many of them for the first time. And I had told him, I said, you know, you have all kinds of people come in the White House. Have these women come in the White House. These women deserve to be heard.
He said to you, people
All right.
get hurt.
People will get hurt. I don't know what that
Okay.
means. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was starting over. Yeah, okay. But I think we got the gist of that clip. I don't know, Rob. Your thoughts on that? That one was dark.
I mean, clearly very dark, but in terms of going out swinging, relaying that Donald Trump specifically said we can't give truth and transparency to the American people and we can't delve into this topic because people will get hurt, really does put some pressure on Donald Trump. What do you mean? So who are you covering up for? Who are these individuals who were involved in this racket that you have concerns for their safety or that they will be hurt? And by hurt, I think you just mean exposed. And
Yeah.
why do we want people who engaged in these crimes not to be exposed?
Well, the thing about this that's really so devastating for Donald Trump, and it really is, like, don't get me wrong, obviously voters vote over kitchen table issues more than anything else. And like, you know, price inflation or unaffordability or whatever it's being called these days are like the major moving. But this is why this Epstein thing has been such a disaster for the administration, man. It just like can't be overstated. And at every turn that Donald Trump and his administration were trying to silence this story, they always just came up with one bullshit excuse after the other. I mean, remember, Rob, it was the floods in Houston at one point were why Donald Trump shouldn't be asked about this. And then it was that the client list didn't exist, or rather that the files didn't exist. And then it was that the whole thing was a Democratic hoax. And then, but like Donald Trump is never actually level, even though everyone knows this is the case, it's either him or other people he's trying to protect. But he's never come out and said, hey, the reason we can't release these files is because all these people will be ruined over it. And then ultimately, of course, he caved and did support releasing the files. So we'll see what happens with that. But like this is just so damning because we all know this is true, or like at least we also like. Does anyone really think Marjorie Taylor Greene is lying here? I guarantee that Donald Trump. I can't guarantee, but I suspect she's telling the truth, and that Donald Trump did say, like, yeah, look, man, there's like, and I think that's right, that there's a whole bunch of fucking really powerful, really connected people who might be hurt by this. But again, I guess the point, which we've said before, is that if you're going to make that argument, you'd go like, okay, so in the most charitable interpretation of that, let's say, hey, there were a lot of people who didn't do anything wrong. You know, they didn't rape underage girls or anything like that. They were just at Epstein's Island, or they just did business with Jeffrey Epstein, or they just did this or something like that. But the problem is that if you're saying that is why we have to not release the Epstein files, then what you're saying is that the cost of protecting rich, influential people who might be very embarrassed, the cost of that is so great that we're willing to pay the much smaller cost of not getting justice for these girls who were victims and not getting transparency for the American people to learn something about what the hell was going on here. And it's like, it's a very clear-cut case of like competing principles. I mean, perhaps there's a way to do it where you didn't reveal people or something like that. But like, if that is the case, that's the cause, like Donald Trump saying, that's why we don't release these files. Well, there's two things with that. Number one, you're saying that the cost of the American people not finding out about the nature of their own goddamn government and the cost of these girls getting justice, that's just a price we'll have to pay to make sure that we protect these powerful men. That's a pretty difficult sell. And then the other thing is that, like, if that's the case, then you're admitting that you just lied through your fucking teeth to your entire base. To your entire base. You were really protecting powerful men, and so you told them it was a Democratic hoax, just like Russiagate. How unforgivable is that, Rob?
Now, I kind of see this as a kitchen table issue, and I'll tell you why. I get what you're saying. Listen, if magically the economy was absolutely booming and everything was completely wonderful and great, it could be
it is. Haven't you heard?
Yeah, it could be that the American people would ignore the Epstein storyline. What makes it a kitchen table issue is people are just kind of inherently aware that we have a corrupt system and it's keeping them down.
And that's why we have these kitchen table issues. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah.
And so the Epstein storyline, it really just kind of fits in because it's like, well, what is this power apparatus that is being protected? And why is it being protected? And it's kind of all one and the same, where it's just like people are aware of the fact, like, this is a system to support the elites at our expense. And the Epstein's kind of like the trophy on that mantle of like, how did you guys get away with this one?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. No, it's a very good point. Yeah, because it kind of like, there is something, right, where people do want, and they're correct too, but on some gut level, yeah, people do connect the corruption in Washington to why they have all these fucking problems to begin with. It's unbelievable how spectacularly they just failed on this. It really is something. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, look, obviously, by the way, I saw someone in the chat asked if I would have Marjorie Taylor Greene on the show. Absolutely. Would love to have her on the show. And look, like, even if I did have her on the show, I'd probably want to ask some of the questions that I had here to ask, but I will say, hey, she was on the right side of a lot of very important issues. And this one in particular, got to give her credit for that. I mean, she went out fighting this fight and she did win it. It's weird to see her leaving right after winning such a big fight against the president. But good for her for fighting it and good for her for winning. We'll see what we actually end up getting out of these documents, Rob, or how heavily redacted they are. I mean, I don't know. President Trump just signed into law a bill to release the files that he said didn't exist. So I don't know. I don't think I've quite seen that before. So, and I've seen a lot of stuff. Anyway, speaking of, I mentioned that Donald Trump tried to make the Epstein files into another Russiagate Democratic hoax or something like that. But speaking of Russiagate, I'm sure you saw, Rob, that Rachel Maddow was just on Stephen Colbert's show a few days ago. And this I was actually surprised by. Now, I don't keep up with what's going on with Rachel Maddow because I just don't hate myself that much. But I actually could not believe this. I had figured that they had all dropped this at this point. But anyway, let's just play this clip. Here is Rachel Maddow on Stephen Colbert's show.
I mean, literally, they wrote the plan for what they want Ukraine to do, and the White House put it on its letterhead and said, here it is. You better do it. And, Russia is a podunk country. They're a huge landmass, largest physical country in the world. They've got an economy like the size of Italy, right? They've got a kleptocratic, sclerotic government run by a guy who's never going to leave until he dies. The idea that we work for him, that we work for them is so humiliating and is such an abject failure on the part of Trump in terms of his weakness. I don't know what Putin has on him, but he works for Putin, and it's an embarrassment to this country. I mean, literally, it is unbelievable
that like what's an embarrassment to this country is that people like Rachel Maddow are seen in public. And again, he works for Vladimir Putin. Like, first of all, you just have to either know nothing about anything, or you have to be relying on the fact that your audience knows nothing about anything. And this is the only way that you could ever even get away with it. Let's just, like, if you just go over like the Donald Trump works for Vladimir Putin, like, just to be clear here, Rob, okay? Donald Trump is he's going into his 6th year as being president of the United States of America, right? This was where he's about to complete in a month his 5th year of being president. In the 5 years that Donald Trump has been president, let's see here, Rob, he tore up the INF treaty. Did Vladimir Putin want that? No, he didn't. He sent huge weapons packages into Ukraine to Zelensky's government. Is that working for Putin, Rob? Well, okay, let's keep going this here. Okay, he bombed Iran. Was that working for Putin? No, that's not what Putin wanted him to do. He's supported Israel. Is that what Vladimir Putin wants? No. Like, you could go through the list all day long of the things Donald Trump's done that were clearly exactly the opposite of what Vladimir Putin wanted. But what is the one talking point that she has here, Rob, is that he took exactly what Vladimir Putin wanted and put that on as the peace deal. Okay, look, there is some truth to that. But Rob, why is that? Because Putin won the war. Putin's in the position to dictate the terms. Putin is clearly going to win. Donald Trump wants the war to be over. The only way to get it over at this point is to get Vladimir Putin to agree to end the thing. And how the hell do you do that if you don't give him what he wants? Like, that's the dynamic here. It in no way proves. She's trying to take that one point and then go, see, this proves me right about all the bullshit I was wrong about for the last goddamn 8 years. And she's trying to pretend that she got it right because he wants to end this war. No, the fact is that the Biden administration, and really it started in the Obama administration, but the Obama administration embarked on a policy. I mean, okay, look, George W. Bush said we were going to bring Ukraine into NATO. Then Barack Obama backed a coup that overthrew the government and put a pro-West government in its place. Then, of course, Joe Biden, when Vladimir Putin invaded the country, decided to go all in on sanctions and weapon packages and aid to Ukraine. And all of that failed. And Vladimir Putin won anyway, despite all of it. The failure was on that policy. It was the expansionist policy of the American empire that's failed. Donald Trump is just admitting it. It's like, in the same way, like, look, you could blame Joe Biden for bungling the withdrawal from Afghanistan. But if you sat there and say, Joe Biden gave the Taliban everything they wanted, which was America leaving, it's like, well, no, dude, George W. Bush's war failed there. You get 20 years later, the Taliban's still in power. You failed to overthrow them. Now, however you feel about the logistics of how we pulled out, that obviously was a failure. But, like, it's not giving them what they want doesn't represent that you work for them. It doesn't mean we work for the Taliban. It just means that they won. That's that. Any thoughts, Rob?
I mean, this is the same nonsense as it was 4 or 5 years ago of if you were at all being pragmatic and you were pointing out that you didn't think that Putin wanted to take over all of Russia or that we were picking an unwinnable fight, those were Russian talking points. And now, if you're being pragmatic and saying, hey, it's embarrassing that Biden talked Ukraine into a war for a bunch of people to die for absolutely no reason, what's unwinnable because we're actually not committing all the resources, nor do we want World War III, you're suddenly taking Putin's side and you're giving Putin a win, which is embarrassing to the United States of America. And it's, yes, this is embarrassing to the United States of America that 4 years ago we made a mistake. We got people killed for no reason, and we picked a fight because we like to pretend that if we just push anybody, they're going to back down and we're going to be victorious, despite 25 years of failed wars and that basically not happening. I guess we overthrew Iraq and had a disaster afterwards, but I'm just saying they like to live in their delusional reality where we're the United States of America, everyone's going to get in line. And we have to hold to this illusion no matter what the cost is. And if you're not going to hold to that illusion, well, then you're giving someone else a win. We're just trying to be pragmatic and be like, let's not waste more money. Let's not waste more of our resources. Let's not have more people die for no reason. Yes, Putin won this war. But guess what? Keeping it going. Do you want nuclear war? If you don't want nuclear war, what is the pathway for us actually winning this? Can you explain it to me, Rachel? Oh, what, we're just going to continue sending stuff over there and they're going to slowly lose more of the country and more people are going to die? Why is that less embarrassing?
Right. It's again, no, what's really happening here is that Donald Trump, despite all of his disastrous failures, is attempting to end a war. And so for that, Rachel Maddow is going to say he's loyal to a foreign power. It's just unbelievable how she ended up turning into this. But by the way, Rob, if you thought that was bad, she actually goes further. Natalie, let's play this clip before we
got more of Stephen Colbert talking to Stephen Colbert.
We do. Yes, I know. It's hard to keep. Rachel Maddow's the one on the couch.
Thank you. Okay.
Here, let's keep playing.
It's like the whole Putin and Trump thing that was so weird for all those years, which a lot of us reported on a lot at the time and got a lot of hassle for it. I'm just saying, it kind of seems like that's now paid off with the Kremlin actually running U.S. foreign policy through the president's doofus Gulf friend. And it's hilarious, except for the fact that we're now years into this deadly war in Ukraine, where they used to think we were their ally and we were helping them stand up against this tyranny. And now we apparently have been captured by the Kremlin and work for Vladimir Putin. I mean, it really just feels.
By the way,
I mean, can you imagine the nerve of this woman, Rob? The nerve of her to just try to do this yada yada, like all these things that were weird that a lot of us were reporting on at the time and we got a lot of flack for. And now look at it. We work for Vladimir Putin. Like, hey, Rachel Maddow, be really specific about the weird things you were reporting on at the time. You mean all of the things that got proven wrong? You know, the ridiculous misreporting from Helsinki, the Steele dossier, the Trump Tower meeting, every single thing that fell apart and was a big nothing burger because you made the wild accusation 9 years ago, that Donald Trump was a spy for Vladimir Putin, that Putin had interfered in the election to overthrow it from Hillary Clinton and give it to Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump was involved in the conspiracy to overthrow that election. That was the claim. There has been zero evidence ever to back this up. There was no reason to believe it. They made up a bunch of non-stories. Every one of them collapsed. Every one of them fell apart. And by the way, the flack that she got while she was covering that was, New York Times reporters winning Pulitzer prizes over, the thing. Like, it's like, yeah, no, you didn't get flack. You got record high ratings. When the whole thing got exposed, you got flack. I mean, maybe people like me and you were giving her flack the whole time for it, but that's because you were doing bullshit propaganda. You had a $30 million federal investigation that came up with nothing, no connection. No connection between Donald Trump, no conspiracy at all for him to be connected to. That's what happened when you guys were all every day on MSNBC saying that, literally on MSNBC wasn't on Rachel Maddow's show. It was on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, where Brennan, the former CIA chief, said 2 weeks before the Mueller report was to be finished, said that we were going to see Donald Trump and his family members let off in handcuffs. That's what we were about to see. And then you know what we saw when the report came out? No, none of that. Found no evidence that Donald Trump committed any crime. And then we got the Durham report. And the Durham report showed us that the FBI lied their asses off, that it was all a big con job to try to frame the president. And then we got the Tulsi Gabbard documents that demonstrate that it was a decision made by the Obama administration, that it was the consensus amongst the intelligence community that not that there was no conspiracy. I want to be very clear about this. Not that there wasn't a conspiracy, that Donald Trump was in on this conspiracy with Russia to interfere in the election. The consensus from the intelligence community was that there was no interference. There wasn't even a thing for there to have been a conspiracy about. And of course there wasn't. It's also ridiculous. Donald Trump is a million things, including a war criminal, including a failed president, including a con man. He's a lot of things. He was not a spy for Vladimir Putin. This is the kookiest thing ever. I'm sorry, this is objectively kookier than anything the kookiest conspiracy theorist ever said. It's like if Alex Jones had said that Barack Obama was like working for the Chinese or something like that, you'd be like, wait, okay, that's just like too fucking crazy. That can't be true. That's Rachel Maddow, and she still defends it to this day.
Last I checked, Donald Trump is working hard on initiating Putin's agenda in Iraq, Syria, and Venezuela, because as a Putin asset, he's hoping to institute more American influence in these locations.
Well, just even like you'd go, hey, like, so if Putin has hijacked our foreign policy, we work for Putin now. The White House works for the Kremlin. Why? It's like it is on the level of when Ben Shapiro said that the Biden administration worked for Hamas. You're like, but I just feel like maybe they wouldn't be bombing them then. You know, like I just feel like wouldn't you say, hey, now that Vladimir Putin has captured our foreign policy, at what point do you think he's going to get some sanction relief? Is that a fair question? Why do we have sanctions against Vladimir Putin if he's the one really running the whole show?
We can send back all that money that we have, the $300 billion or whatever that was that is still contested and hasn't been given back.
Right. Yeah, somehow Vladimir Putin. Yeah, it just seems like oh yeah, that's crazy. Vladimir Putin, who now runs our foreign policy, you really got to clean up all these anti-Putin measures that we've been taking. Or the other option is that Rachel Maddow's a fucking idiot. That's the other thing that could be going on here. Anyway, we're going to wrap up our show there, but we will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode. Regular time, 1 p.m. tomorrow. Catch you guys then. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Filmed some real stupid shit over the weekend. Excited to get it out. The nice part about being home.
That's what I like to hear. I like to know that when we're not on the road, you're filming stupid shit.
Oh, this is the most highly produced, stupidest thing I've done yet. Check it out.
Really?
Bob's Newsroom on YouTube. It will be out this week.
Ooh, that was quite a good promo. I like that. You've got me excited. And of course, then this weekend, me and you are going back up to Boston. Very excited for that. Haven't been to Boston in too long, and it's only a few days away now. The 27th, 28th, and 29th, we will be up at Laugh Boston, comicdavesmith.com for those tickets. And then I'm off to the races doing a lot of traveling. And a bunch for stand-up, and then some other big podcasts coming up. comicdavesmith.com. There's also Nashville is next. I think there's still some tickets for those shows. And then, yeah, we'll be on the road for the rest of the year. I know you got some other headline gigs coming up, Rob. Isn't that right?
I got a Steamboat. I think it's April 5th and 6th, and the weekend after that, I've got Des Moines. I think I finally got that right. Hanging out at a libertarian event. Scott Horton's there the next night. I think Joshua Smith lives out there. He got some cool stuff going on. So come hang out. I'm doing a stand-up Friday night.
All right, sounds good. All right, well let's get into it for today. There's a lot going on in the world. There are a few things that we specifically wanted to talk about, and I guess I sometimes I wonder. I'm like at a point right now. I don't know if this is true, but I think probably of all the times that I've been in this podcasting game, there's been a decent amount of time at this point. There's probably never been a period of time where I've felt like there was more, that was more interesting, or there's more just kind of like incredible things going on where you're like, oh, this is like truly historic. There's also, there's kind of never been a time where there were more options of what to talk about and more distractions than right now. I just found it kind of interesting as I'm like preparing for the show, and I'm kind of like, all right, well, yeah, this seems like a lot to do about nothing. See, this kind of seems like a distraction. And then I'm like trying to more and more focus on like, what are the major things going on right now? And to some, in some ways, I was like a little bit torn because as I've mentioned, to you, Rob, several times, and to all of you listeners, one of the things, it's almost easy at this point to like ignore the Democrats. Like right now, you could almost find yourself just being like, well, they're down and out, they're losers, they're irrelevant. The corporate media is irrelevant, all of this. So let's just focus on this. But I can't help but feeling that, number one, it's a really interesting story where the Democrats go from here, and that it's actually something important to talk about. Like when you see one of the major two political parties more defeated than at any point in my life, it's like, are they going the way of the Whigs? Are they going to make some giant comeback? You know what I mean? Like, and what exactly is what is going to be changed about the Democrats going forward? Because it's got to be something. And anyway, that's just something that's been on my mind, and it's kind of what the first two clips that I have on today's show are about, that topic. Just to be clear, I don't mean to suggest that like we should prioritize focus on this over focus on what the current administration is doing. I think we could try to do both over the next coming weeks and months, but I do find it very interesting when there is when the recent events have been so devastating for the Democrats, and then you see all of these different kind of competing forces and these competing ideas, if you want to call them that, of what we do going forward. I do find that interesting. Okay, so why don't we could jump right into this. I'd say let's start with the first video that I sent you, Alex, which is Ellie Mistel. I don't think I ever had that name memorized, but I know he is the fat black guy with white hair on MSNBC. I know that much about him. I've seen him many times, and he's an unforgettable figure to see. But I do have to say, now I know this is a little bit unfair because this is MSNBC and no one watches, but I did find this to be really interesting because with all of the kind of different, the dynamic is that essentially I think Democrats were denying reality for a very long time, denying reality in any area of life. I think most people who are, let's say, adult age people, maybe say 25 and over, have probably at least once in their life, if not a few times, learned what is an invaluable life lesson. It applies to all areas of life, but that denying reality is a dangerous game, and reality has a way of slapping you in the face when you ignore it. You can ignore reality, but the fact is it's still reality. And that eventually, like if you're ignoring gravity and you jump off a balcony, reality is going to slap you in the face. In this case, it would be the ground. And what Democrats are dealing with by and large is that they staked out very unpopular positions for many years. They denied the unpopularity of those opinions. They denied the mental state of the former president of the United States of America. They denied a lot. And that reality came and slapped them in the face. And now they can't deny it anymore. So they're all making different attempts to grapple with it and different attempts to strategize. Here is the latest that I've seen on MSNBC.
Okay, so like what?
Well, we could eliminate all voter registration laws. See, when Democrats get in charge, we try to protect voting rights. We don't make voting easier. Now, I'm all for voter eligibility requirements. We might disagree about what those requirements should be, but I'm going to say that like there should be an age limit to vote. I might say 16, you might say 18, but I'm not going to say 8. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to agree that there should be voter eligibility requirements. But once you're eligible, why do you have to pre-register? Why is that even a thing? It wasn't a thing in this country at the founding. We didn't have voter pre-registration in 1787. We didn't have voter pre-registration in 1821. We only started having voter registration, generally speaking, after the Civil War. Why do you think that is? It's because a bunch of freed African slaves were migrating up north, and all of a sudden New York was like, we need some registration up in here, right? A bunch of immigrants from Europe, mainly Ireland and Italy, were coming to New York. People were like, oh, we need some registration in here. If you're eligible to vote, you should be automatically registered to vote, and that is how they do it everywhere else but us. Everywhere else but us either has automatic registration or some other form of forced registration for everybody, so that you don't have this disconnect between eligible voters and registered voters. That's the first law in the book that we could change. And it's to see how that's different than just saying we have to protect voting rights. No. We don't have to protect voting rights. We have to expand voting rights so that the 90 million people that sat on the couch and sat out this last election between democracy and fascism, so that maybe they have a little bit of an easier time to get up off the couch and come participate in the democracy.
All right. Now, I think it might be fairly obvious why this caught my eye. I just think look, there's a lot that was just like kind of packed in there, and we can get into it. I'd like to kind of parse all this out. Rob, I don't know if you're for voter registration, but if you are, you're racist. That's the takeaway. But isn't it there seems to me to be something of an interesting admission kind of buried within this strategy, which is essentially that we've kind of given up on the electorate. You know, it's like, look, I don't think we can win with this electorate. So what if we get all these other people who aren't voting? You know, it's funny to me, like, what the mentality of this would be, because you're saying 90 million people sat out the last election between democracy and fascism. And yet those are the people you're counting on? The people who saw, you know, democracy versus fascism on the ballot and couldn't even be bothered to, you know, it's a pretty minimal effort what it takes to vote. Like I've never talked to any voter. Maybe I'm just talking to the wrong groups of people, but I've never talked to any voter who is like, it is just insane what they make you go through in order to vote. There's lots of other things where that would be my complaint. Like, it's insane what it takes for me to build a fence in my backyard. That is genuinely insane. It's insane that I have to go down and wait in a line and pay a fee and then come back months later just to put a goddamn garden in my fucking backyard. But I've never heard anyone say that about voting. But now you have these people who would not step over the tiniest hurdle in the world in order to save democracy, and your plan is to eliminate that hurdle. It just doesn't seem like the best strategy ever. I don't know. Any thoughts on any of this, Rob?
Well, that certainly stood out to me when he said that there were 90 million voters, I guess, who decided not to vote against what did he say? Tyranny? He didn't quite use that word, but that's what he's implying. It was the end of democracy, and 90 million people just didn't show up. I mean, clearly it wasn't the end of democracy, because I'd have to think that 90 million people, if all they needed to do was register to vote and we could keep our democracy, they'd probably do so. So speaking to that, I mean, this guy who looks like he was drawn by Dilbert, like he's just a cartoon character, and this is clearly nonsense that, you know, it was the end of our democracy and just 90 million people weren't engaged. No, you didn't earn those people's votes.
Yes, the point is, we don't believe you. We don't believe that this was the end of our democracy. Yes.
Yeah, that was clearly nonsense. And he didn't sell those people. And, you know, you and I have done hundreds of episodes explaining why the Democrats were not the better option in this past election. So the starting point of your analysis just being 90 million people were uninterested in keeping the democracy, it's because you're lying. With that being said, I think that there absolutely should be a requirement to show your identification in order to vote. And there should be a mechanism that ensures the fact that you're actually a U.S. citizen. And the fact that apparently acquiring IDs is racist is something that the government should fix, because there's so many other activities that you require ID for. So if you would just think about all of the ways that our society seems to be racist, because apparently people can't drive cars, they can't purchase alcohol, they can't check into hotels. And the fact that the government doesn't want to fix that process and make it easier for people to just partake in civil society, I mean, we should be addressing the racism issue of our government, that it makes it hard for minorities to acquire IDs. With that said, removing voter registration, but keeping the fact that you have to have your ID to prove you're a U.S. citizen, I don't care if there's a registration process.
Yeah, listen, I'll be honest, I don't particularly care either. I just find this line of argument to be so flawed and just inaccurate. I mean, look, when he says at the beginning, he goes, look at the founding of the country, you didn't have to register to vote. It's like, okay, that is true, but you're also invoking a time when only white male landowners could vote. And so if you're framing voter registration as some type of restriction on voting rights, right? I mean, that's how he framed it. We're expanding voter rights. It's like, well, then I don't really think that this would be the example to look to. And I do think that there's something, you know, because there is something about the modern woke historian that will essentially insist that the entire, you know, all of history can be understood as it used to be racist. That's, you know, it used to be racist, or maybe it used to be sexist. And if we want to go really far, it used to be homophobic or something like that. But that's basically all of history. But it's just what, I don't know. It's an interesting, you know, additional piece of information that it was also restricted to landowners, and that free white men still could not vote if they didn't own land. And there was a concept behind that. And you can agree or disagree with that. But the idea was that if we're voting over how to spend the treasury, you know, which of course was a much smaller pot at the time, but if we were voting over like how to spend public money, you couldn't allow people with nothing to have a say in that too, because there's no incentive there for them to not vote all the stuff for themselves, and then we're all poor together. And that you actually had to be somewhat you had to be in the owner class in society in order to make decisions. Now, again, you can disagree with that. There's flaws in that way of looking at things, but it, you know, there also is an argument to the fact that, like, yeah, owners get to make decisions about what's done with things that people who don't own it don't get to make, and that is to some degree important. Now, his point about how these voter registration laws were put into effect after the Civil War or during periods of mass immigration, you know, I certainly would not argue. In fact, I don't think anyone could really argue that there haven't been voter restrictions in the past that were intentionally designed to keep some people out, or that were just abused in practice, thinking literacy tests or things like that. Now, that being said, it does not necessarily follow from that you ought to have the view that there should be absolutely no standard or absolutely no minimal, you know, like test before you get to vote. Like, for example, let's just say that it wasn't abused, right? Like, let's just say it's just a hypothetical. And if your answer to this would be like, well, I don't support it because it can be abused in practice, that's a totally reasonable answer. I'm just saying, in theory, in a hypothetical, would a literacy test necessarily be wrong? Like, should, you know, we're voting over who gets to rule the most powerful government in the history of the world here. Would it be, if, let's just say hypothetically, there were a way to enforce it that wasn't discriminatory and wasn't unfair, but it was just like, hey, like, if you can't read a chapter, like if you can't read at third grade level, then you don't get to vote. Is that in itself, in principle, draconian or awful or something like that? Because I got to say, I don't think it is. I actually think it's kind of crazy, the idea that illiterate people get to vote. Now, again, I'm not saying I would necessarily support that restriction because it can be abused, but I do think that, like, it's interesting when you have a situation where there is Nobody today, I mean, this guy, I guess, would make that argument, but I don't think any serious person can really say that voter registration is done to target Black people or to target a certain group of people or keep them out. And I do just find something interesting about the question of like, is the minimum requirement, like, let's just say I said you have to put pants on and go outside. You know what I mean? And you were like, we got to get rid of this requirement. You're kind of like, wait, who is it you're trying to get to vote? What is it? You're telling me that the person who can't figure out registering to vote or doesn't care enough to figure it out and go do it, that it's that important to make sure that guy's voice counts too? I just find this to be a very strange, like, again, I'm with you, Rob. I'm not saying like I'm not married to the idea of voter registration. Should you automatically be registered? Perhaps. I guess maybe my issue in it is like in the same sense of like, you know, how like you might have a job interview like at 8 a.m. and like half the test of that interview is just like, hey, can you show up on time at 8 a.m. looking presentable? Like they're just the lowest form of like, prove to me that you're participating in society here. And just for that reason alone, I tend to go like, I'm not sure I want to make it easier to vote. I think before you vote in the popularity contest of who rules over me, maybe there should be some minimum requirement that you meet. Does that make sense?
I don't know that I agree with it, but it certainly makes sense. I get where you're coming from.
Well, it just seems like they're trying to stick up for the person who can't do any of that. They're like, man, if we could get those people, maybe we could, you know what I mean? It's the same reason, like, who the hell wants 16-year-olds voting? Like, I don't know. This just already shows something about you. 16 years old? He's like, oh, look, we got to set the age somewhere. It's like, okay, granted. And we all agree it's not 8 because I might say 16, you say 18. I mean, think about the fact that like listen, dude, if an adult had consensual sex with a 16-year-old, we all think they should go to fucking jail for a long, long time. And why is that? Because like a 16-year-old can't really consent to an adult. It doesn't matter if they said it or you're just so psychologically and mentally more powerful than them that you are just totally like, it's just taking advantage of like prey in order for you to like extract some form of consent out of them. So who the hell are these people who it's like, that's where you want to go for your voting base? Like you got to look at the people who are fucking 16 and then the people who couldn't figure out how to register for a vote. And that's who you want to be, you know what I mean? To be your reinforcements. Like I find it disturbing. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Hexclad. Guys, if you're trying to cook healthier or save money or just stop eating microwavable burritos, Hexclad has got you covered. It's time to leave behind the delivery fees and that scratched up pan you've been dealing with since college. You've probably already heard how Hexclad has completely revolutionized pots and pans by combining the performance of stainless steel with the convenience and easy cleanup of nonstick. But Hexclad's innovation doesn't stop there. Their Japanese Damascus steel knives are as sharp as they are tough, perfect for leveling up your meal prep. The sleek pepper mill lets you season like a pro with precision and style. Hexclad's Japanese Damascus steel knives are not just tools, they're works of art designed to make your time in the kitchen effortless. These knives are forged from 67 layers of premium Japanese Damascus steel, giving you incredible durability and edge retention. And just like all Hexclad products, they have a lifetime warranty. They've also got the pans that truly check every single box when it comes to picking your cookware. Plus, their patented laser-etched hexagon steel ridges boost your searing power. These are the best pans you'll ever own. And for a limited time, our listeners can get 10% off your order with this exclusive link. Just head to hexclad.com/problem. Support our show and get yourself some incredible cookware at hexclad.com/problem. Make sure to let them know that you heard about them on the Part of the Problem podcast and enjoy the revolutionary cookware. All right, let's get back into the show.
It certainly sounds like the wrong pitch instead of, hey, 90 million people are unengaged in our political process. And so I think we need to figure out how to speak to these other individuals. What are
Yeah.
the rights that will get them to show up and vote for? How do we compel these people to engage? And then make up some bullshit of, I know that these are the people that would be better represented by the Democratic Party. And so we just have to figure out how to reach out to them. But to just say, hey, we have to make it easier for these people who are unengaged to show up. That's not, firstly, it doesn't seem like a winning strategy. I don't think the voter registration is what's getting in the way of these people voting. So you're just talking nonsense here. But now you're also just thinking like, how do I just get bodies here? Like, how do we not
Yes.
change any policy? How do we not change what we're doing? How do I just figure out how to win this game and get more bodies showing up? Because we can't vote the corpses anymore. We lost that one. We did it once and it worked for us. So what's our new scheme? We can't get immigrants over the border because we're not in control anymore. We were trying that one. So what do we have left? I don't know. We can make it easier for the other 90 million people to show up and offer them some free stuff and maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's what it seems like to me. And there's, like I said before, there's such an admission that you feel like you can't win with the electorate as it is. And look, like, I don't know. I just, the Democrats, you're like, if you look around, you'd be like, hey, look, I mean, obviously you lost pretty bad in this election, but you know, Donald Trump's approval rating, from what I've seen, has been hovering between 47 and 53%. That's not like, oh my God, it's insurmountable. We could, you know what I mean? Like, there's a good chunk of the country who's opposed to Donald Trump, maybe not a majority, but very close to half of the electorate is opposed to him. And like, you ran the most god-awful candidate ever. So you would sit there and be like, okay, all we got to do is like figure out a good candidate, figure out a good message, actually stand for something, actually do something for the American people. Instead, this like going to, well, let's see if we can't win over the people who are totally not engaged. And then, of course, the other major flaw in this strategy is that, like, look, this is, okay, so I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but I always love this. Now, this is something I've never done in my life in stand-up comedy. I don't think it's something you've ever done, but it is an old thing that you've probably heard of, been done before. But I remember this one time I was watching this comic and he was bombing, having a real rough one. And it's just the crowd hated him. Nothing's going over. He's now he's getting heckled and he hasn't gotten any laughs the whole set. And then at one point he goes, so one of the guys was heckling him and he goes, oh yeah, dude, you think this is so easy? You want to try to do my job? And he offers him the microphone to come on stage and come do it. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this you know what I'm saying? You ever heard that? But I remember thinking to myself, I was a young comic at the time too, but I was like, oh man, this guy's instincts are so bad that he doesn't even get what that old game is. Like, okay, I've never done this and I would never give up the microphone at a stand-up comedy show. I feel like that's yours. You're the comedian. You get the microphone. You don't give that up. But the way that old dealing with a heckler thing works is that you're killing with the crowd. The crowd loves you. One guy starts heckling and you go, oh, you think this is so easy? Come up here, do that. This guy's totally unprepared to be a comedian. He gets on stage with a microphone. The whole crowd is rooting for this guy to lose. And so the cards are totally stacked against him. You're going to win this thing because you came as a professional comedian with jokes and he has nothing. You don't do that move when you're dying, when the crowd doesn't like, because God forbid this guy grabs the microphone and says one funny thing that like gets some laughs. And now not only did you bob your ass off in this set, but then this guy came and got laughs and it's the worst moment in the history of the world. So anyway, the comic was given, like, the manager of the club came in and broke it up, said, you can't have the microphone, and brought the next comedian on stage. It was a whole nightmare situation. Anyway, the point I'm making is this move has a prerequisite to it. Okay, well, we're going to abolish voting registration. Well, that would have to be done with federal legislation, which you do not control. You have to get power back first. So this is all Like the prerequisite to all of this is that you have to win back power first, meaning you can't telegraph this strategy. You can't sit there and go, hey, listen, voting electorate, I know you've rejected us, but if you elect us again, we are going to dilute down your votes with bodies who we think we can manipulate more easily. This was a good strategy for when Joe Biden was in and the Democrats had Congress. Be like, do this now, hush, hush, we say quietly at a boardroom meeting somewhere, and then we won't have to worry about this next time. It does not work as the underdog strategy to announce this as your plan to regain power. If you get what I'm saying there. So I just find this funny that this is the musing. Like on MSNBC, as the ratings are collapsing, they're going, I know what we're going to do. Use all this power we have in the federal government to overhaul voting. Anyway, as no matter how much you can try to spin this and try to play this as like, you know, it's all these disenfranchised people or something that we're trying to give a voice. The bottom line is that when you've taken a shellacking and you're on a network whose ratings are collapsing, when you come out here and go, we need to be able to get a whole different electorate, I don't see how that doesn't come off as weak and desperate. That'd kind of be my final thought. Any final thoughts on this one, Rob?
I hope he returns to the Dilbert cartoon in which he came.
I mean, we can only pray. We can only pray. All right, let's there was another. I'm actually maybe a little bit embarrassed to admit this, but I wanted to go to this next clip because this was from Bill Maher's show, kind of more or less on the same theme. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that I did not actually know this. So Bill Maher opened talking about kind of like the future of gerrymandering and results of the great migration shifts within the United States of America over the last few years. Anyway, let's go to this clip because I did find this really fascinating. Here is Bill Maher from this Friday.
But just to continue on this for a minute, because I just saw this really bad news for Democrats. 2030 reapportionment, there's a group called the American Redistricting Project, and in 5 years, we will be redistricting. California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over. You know, and the reason why people are voting with their feet is a lot of what your book is about.
Yeah,
taxes and regulation. I certainly have been screaming about it forever. I did 3 years with a sign here that said, how long is it going to take me to get my solar hooked up? 3 years. Talking about it on television in this state. You couldn't do it. This state has almost 400,000 regulations. I just put in a new roof because the fire, I thought, oh, let's get a roof that's not going to burn up. 2 inspections. Why are you inspecting my roof? It's my fucking roof. If it falls on me, that's my problem. And we're taxed more than any other state. People are leaving these kind of states for places where they're not, they feel the heavy breath of government on them. It's not that hard for Democrats to understand this, but they seem to be incapable of doing anything about it.
I thought that was a really powerful rant from Bill Maher, and it's very interesting. I didn't realize how soon it was coming and how many seats were going to be going from blue states to red states. But he's not wrong. I mean, that's a really big deal. I think he rattled off 10 or 11 seats, and in a closely divided Congress. I mean, that's a really big deal to take 10 or 11 seats and give them to the other side, which theoretically is where that's going. And it was interesting to me to see kind of like a group of 3 liberals who were all at that table having to kind of grapple with this fact that taxes and regulations, like big government, is unpopular. And of course it is. It wouldn't be government if it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, it would be done voluntarily if it were popular. And I think that probably there's a bit more to it than that. I don't think it's as simple as taxes and regulation, but undeniably, that is a huge component to this. And it is, when you have, and again, I don't want to do the thing that a lot of Democrats are doing right now, where they're going like, they're acting like Donald Trump and Elon Musk were me and you. Like, we took over, Crystal Ball said anarcho-capitalism is the driving ideology behind all these guys. And, their mission is to destroy government or something like that. But when you kind of broadly, at least in the American people's minds, have the idea that, okay, the Republican Party is like, if I had a loose sketch of this, they're talking about how there's fraud and abuse in government, how there's a swamp, how there's a deep state, and we have to kind of like roll that back. And then you have the Democrats over here who are like the party of government, the party of we need rules and regulations and all of these things. It's very challenging to be the party of government when all of your major cities where you guys are the government are a disaster, are all like the poster boy for inept, corrupt government. That is a tricky position to be in. And that's really, I think, what's going on in a lot of these big cities. What are your thoughts, Rob?
I didn't realize Bill Maher was such a libertarian. Hey, this is my roof. Why do I need the government coming in here and tell me how I should operate my own roof? I guess I should dig in a little bit more on just how much migration there's been from these large states. I'm sure that the problem for the Democrats is going to be amplified if there actually is a mass movement of illegal migrants out of the country. And I'd love to see actual figures on that of exactly how many people came over and what that means for congressional seats, particularly as a lot of them did make their way to New York because there were good social services for a period of time, including hotel stays. And then even Republican governors were just busting them right up in there, which was actually a good strategy for educating the public at large, but it might have been a bad strategy for congressional seats. But anyways, it is, I think one of the, it happened in New York State. They got a massive federal bailout during COVID. And I thought that was bad because we need to showcase bad liberal policies in order for people to actually realize that they're failed policies and to make the correction of people leaving these areas because it's corrective. And I think, it kind of showcases the bad policy failing when it actually fails. And I guess that this is a pretty good storyline that Republicans are going to pick up this many congressional seats. I didn't realize that it was that big. What's that? It was like 12 seats he just mentioned. It's pretty big.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Well, I think that there's basically been, I think, since 2020, late 2020, early 2021, the exodus out of California and New York has really just not stopped. I mean, I think it's had higher and lower moments.
Dude, I think Hollywood's over. Like, I listen, I can't prove this to you, but it just seems that there's actually a lot more independent filming going on now, and it seems like more and more Hollywood projects are taking place in other areas. And I wonder how much star power really wants to hang out in that state versus going to new areas and just, with more favorable taxes and the works. Like, why is everyone hanging on to California?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you've seen, these are the things that I don't like, the stories that don't typically interest me that much, but I don't know if you've seen, everybody's making a big deal out of this Snow White movie, I guess totally flopped. And there was fun beef though.
I didn't totally follow the story, but there was fun beef between Gal Gadot and the other lady because they were both making like opposing political views of her being pro-Palestinian and Gal Gadot being the gorgeous Israeli. And so they got some bad press up front over that. And I just thought that princess drama pouring off screen of dissenting political views in the Disney environment, I dug in zero other than seeing the headline, but I just thought drama was hilarious.
All I saw was, and I kind of feel bad because the girl seems so young. I mean, I don't know how old she is. She's at her oldest in her early 20s. But the girl who's like the star of it was, she had several interviews where she was like, just kind of like shitting on the old version and being like, the original was made in 1937, and like you can totally tell. And we're not going to be doing that whole thing where we're waiting for a prince and we're doing that. She's 23. Okay, so I thank you. But so I'm really hesitant to ever like try to trash anyone that age, because like I don't know what she's doing is just the typical thing that we all did as adolescents. It's one of the unfortunate qualities, but it's also probably like a necessary quality. Like when you're young, you have this tendency to be like, I've sized up the whole world, and you know what? It's all bullshit. The grown-ups are all wrong. And that's, there's some positive in that as well as some negative. As you get older, you're supposed to kind of gain a little bit more respect for your elders and be like, actually, maybe they did have a point. Maybe they learned a few lessons that I had to learn myself. But there is something about it that's very unappealing. If it's very unappealing to listen to a teenager talk about how their parents are assholes, and you're kind of like, all right, yeah, but they're working their ass off to give you everything you have. So, but so I'm not like, but there is something, about watching. It's not her, like whatever, she's a young girl, and she's probably very talented, and is probably part of the reason why she's here. What's crazy is that all the adults around her, meaning Hollywood, put this front and center and then expected this to like sell well, and evidently they took a huge flop on like the money they put in versus how many people want to see this thing. I just think there's something about this where the point that we've gotten to where they almost seem incapable of readjusting and going like, okay, we got to drastically cut overhead and really put out a product that our consumer base wants to see. And they're just incapable of doing it. And so I agree with you. I mean, like, I don't know what the future of Hollywood is, but there seems no reason to me why there should be any future. And why the hell do you need these big studios anymore? The people, you got little, I mean, I know this from my work. I'm sure you do too, Rob, but there are these little, there are little production companies that you could pay like 20, 30 grand that can make like fucking magic happen. And some of these, I mean, if you had like a few $100 grand to pay them, they could make a badass, cool looking movie for you. It's like, why is it exactly that you need these big studios at that point? Anyway, to Bill Maher's thing, if you really want to look at it, and I think there's probably someone could dig into the data and really find numbers to support this. But the fact is that when people really started fleeing out of the big cities in this country, and like me and you are kind of two examples of this, Rob, but it was during COVID. And it was the fact that the blue cities, look, everybody locked down. With all due respect to Kristi Noem, who was the governor of South Dakota, she did not. But it's still South Dakota. But for the rest of the country, everybody did the lockdowns. But like the blue states just hung on so much longer and were so much stricter. And it was way past the point, way past the point where everyone had already come to terms with what level of risk they were comfortable with the virus. And so they just kept these cities shut down. This is a big part of the reason why Austin had such a huge, surge, because, people wanted to find a city where you could still go to a restaurant, where you could still be normal, where you didn't have to wear a mask everywhere, all this stuff. And then also as a result of those prolonged lockdowns, the homelessness, the drugs, the crime, I mean, all of these things just got materially worse in all of the blue cities. And it is one of those things where it's pretty easy for somebody who is, let's just say, even slightly leans conspiratorial, for them to just go, oh, George Soros is intentionally trying to destroy the United States of America. Like, why else would you do this? Well, I mean, like, if your plan was to have prolonged lockdowns and at the same time period say, we're going to stop prosecuting property crime, we're also at the same time going to say homeless people are allowed to build encampments on public sidewalks wherever they want to. I mean, like, what? Who could be shocked that people were like, oh, I think I might move then? Like, what did you think the result of all of this was going to be? That people would just, you know what I mean, accept it? And it's no, people are moving. And then the really sick thing, right? This is what's so bizarre and I guess seemingly ironic on first glance, but I think not actually ironic once you dive into it. But like, you know, when you see, let's say when you see people leaving, let's say Los Angeles and New York City by the hundreds of thousands every year, hundreds of thousands pouring out of the cities. And by the way, I should be clear, this was happening before COVID. It picked up after the lockdowns. But when you see that, well, if you dig a little bit deeper and look into who's moving, it's almost all middle class, upper class people. That's who's leaving. Now, you could sit there and say, oh, that's because of the taxes. Part of that's true. But the other major part of that is that, you know, working class and poor people just can't afford to move. They just don't have that luxury. I mean, if you're a working class guy and you've got a job, you can't really just pick up and move. Also, there's big expenses to interstate moving. You may not have that option. And so the whole bottom 50% of all of these major cities are essentially just stuck. Many of them would move if they could. They just don't have that option. And it's a pretty terrible thing to do to people, is to kind of make them, you know, like, I don't know exactly what the number is, how many people would leave these cities if they had the opportunity to, but don't. But there's a lot. There's a lot of people who are essentially just trapped in these cities as they become objectively much worse places to live. And that is, you know, that is a real albatross around the Democrats' neck that I don't know exactly how they're going to get rid of. Like, how are they going to deal with the fact that it's like, yeah, you literally had full control of these areas and made them such nightmares that even the people there wanted to leave? Because all things being equal, people tend to want to stay where they are. All things being equal, you're like, I live here. I don't know. It's a pain in the ass to leave. And that thing's got to be pretty bad before they make people leave en masse like that. So rough time for the Dems. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Sheath Underwear. I've been telling you about them for years and years now. The best pair of boxer briefs you will ever own, the most comfortable underwear I have ever put on my body, and the only underwear that I ever wear at this point. Also, longtime sponsors of this show, so make sure you go support Sheath. Sheath creates amazing underwear, and if you don't love them, they have a 100% money-back guarantee off your first pair. Plus, they have an amazing line of underwear for women as well, so it's not just for us fellas. Go check them out at sheathunderwear.com and use the promo code PROBLEM for 20% off. They ship anywhere in the world. One more time, sheathunderwear.com, promo code PROBLEM for 20% off. All right, let's get back into the show. I don't know. Any other thoughts on this one, Rob?
I bet remote work also is a variable that you're no longer necessarily restricted to having to live in major cities in order to work your careers, which is also a result of Democratic or nationwide policy that was a little bit more sold by the Democrats through the COVID regime.
Yes, that is that's a good point. A very good point. That probably did have a huge impact on it too. Once you're working from home, you have a lot more options of what you can do. And a lot of people who have jobs, you know, jobs are a big thing that draws people into cities. And once you could have that job from somewhere else, you could probably have a lot more, you know, a much bigger home for the same price or whatever. And a lot of people probably chose that. All right. Fair point there, Rob. All right. Let's move over to this appearance by Tom Homan. Am I saying his name right? Is it Homan? I think so.
I think Homan, but
Homan? The Border Czar. He really does. His personality really is much more of the Border Czar than any name that you could come up with. That seems like that should have been what his parents named him. Anyway, he was
I would
on
go with Officer Hardass. Like, yeah, that should literally be his name from birth. First name Officer, last name Hardass.
Well, look, he's a character for sure, and in some ways, you can understand why he's an appealing character to be the Border Czar. I've always been a little bit of two minds about the guy. You know, like I do think that it's like the immigration policy under Joe Biden was beyond nuts. I think it was suicidal and horrible. And I think you need kind of someone like this, maybe almost to clean up that mess. It also does, like, my libertarian spidey senses go off where I go, this is everything about the beginning of a dystopian movie where this guy's in charge and is like, we're just going to clean up the problem. Okay, so there's been a lot being made about the way that the Trump administration is going about some of these deportations. And Haman was on This Week on ABC to discuss. Go ahead.
If I can give a very short synopsis. So
Sure.
essentially, a number of supposed Venezuelan gang members were flown to a jail in El Salvador, which is seemingly probably one of the worst jails on the planet. Now, both sides of the story stink in that I don't think district judges should be able to basically overrule the president. And that becomes an issue because, for example, when Joe Biden was saying you're not allowed to evict tenants and then a court overruled him, I thought that that was illegal of Joe Biden. And so there needs to be some sort of a mechanism to check the president. I think you almost need a secondary federal Supreme Court that has multiple judges on it versus single courts and a single Democratic judge. I believe this might have been a different case, but I think this guy was the guy who gave a soft sentencing to Ray Epps. So that's a little bit shady. And so I think single judges from Democratic districts that were appointed by Democratic presidents checking the current the current president, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And now there needs to be a mechanism for policing the president if he is engaging in illegal behavior. I think we need a different system than district judges. So I think it's a problem that a district judge is giving him a hard time about it. But what they did here of just taking people that they're saying are Venezuelan criminals or gang members, not even necessarily if they committed a crime other than being in a gang, and then just depositing them in a jail seemingly for life, that doesn't seem like, if you want to just ship them back to Venezuela and then Venezuela process them directly into a jail, that's on Venezuela. That's not on us. But for us to just take people and never perform a court case and just putting them directly into a jail that's not even their country of origin. And I made a joke on Run Your Mouth that if you're in a gang, you should get a tattoo that just says not a gang member, because I was just saying these are for sure. I'm sure that there are some people that ended up in there just because of their tattoos. And there's one lawyer claiming that a guy was a fan of soccer and just got the wrong tattoo. We'll find out whether or not that is a true story or not a true story. If, as a betting man, just with the way the government operates, if you take 300 people without a court case and you just throw them into a jail, how many people you think are going to be innocent? I mean, if you had to throw a number on it, it's going to be more than 2. Do you want to take the over-under on 25? I might even take the over-under on that. I'll probably take the under on 50. But I'm just saying that there's some people that just got sent to a jail in a country that they're not from for life directly from the United States government. And now this is the video of him defending his reason for doing this. And I don't think it's much of a defense.
All right. Yeah, let's play the video. That was a good setup.
I'm joined now by the Trump administration's border czar, Tom Homan. Mr. Homan, thank you very much for joining us. I want to start with something you said last week that caused a big stir. You said, I quote, "I don't care what judges think." Now, I know you have since said that the administration will abide by court orders. We heard Donald Trump say the same thing. So what do you mean when you say, "I don't care what judges think"?
I don't care what that judges think. As far as this case, we're going to continue to arrest public safety threats and national security threats. We're going to continue to deport them from the United States. I understand this case is in litigation through the Alien Enemies Act, and we'll abide by the court order as litigated. But my quote was, despite what he thinks, we're going to keep targeting the worst of the worst, which we've been doing since day one, and deporting from the.
Here's another just interesting thing to note. I've seen in the past where they'll use a law that hasn't been enforced for a long time, and then you go, hey, that's kind of corrupt. We don't usually use this law. The last time the Alien Enemies Law was used was when we interned the Japanese during World War II. And I don't think there's a lot of people that are pointing to that and going, that was a good American policy. This is a good rule on the books. So when he goes, hey, there is a law on the books that gives us the authority to do so. From what I understand, And I think I read that in the New York Times. The last time that law was used was interning the Japanese. And I don't think people look at that now and go, hey, that was very moral and just what we did during that time.
Yeah, and I must say that I really just cannot stand the kind of ridiculous, like kind of circular argument that'll just be like, well, look, we're concerned that you're not getting the worst of the worst here. And it's like, well, we're going to keep getting the worst of the worst. That's why we're targeting them, because they're the worst of the worst.
Straight just like, deporting someone, go ahead. If someone's stuck into the country illegally and you want to deport them, I think we should go after the criminals first. But I've also said just make them second-class citizens where they don't get benefits, they can't vote. I think everyone wins, but fine. You want to deport people back to their country of origin, go ahead and do so. You want to go after the criminals first? Great. But you can't just take people and deposit them into a jail without any sort of a court process whatsoever. That's just not what we're talking about here. And that's not even what you're saying when you go, well, we're going to continue to go after criminals and deport criminals. Great. Deport criminals, but don't deposit them into a jail without a court case for life.
Yeah. No, look, if somebody's here illegally, then I think you have a right to force them to leave. But yeah, when you're talking about sending them to a brutal prison in El Salvador, you're going to have to give me at least a little something. Like, we know this is a bad person because of X. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Paint Your Life. I love this company. Let me tell you about them if you haven't heard of them already. Maybe you're looking for a great Mother's or Father's Day gift idea. Maybe you're thinking about something to get your grandmother or something like that. Look no further than Paint Your Life. Now you can get a professional hand-painted portrait created from any photo at a truly affordable price, an unforgettable Mother's or Father's Day gift. You just upload photos to create anything you imagine, put yourself in a location you've always wanted to visit, or you could add a lost loved one to a special occasion to create the portrait of your dreams. There's lots of options. You choose the artist, the art medium, so you can choose oil, acrylic, watercolor, charcoal, and more, and you select from a variety of quality frames. So what you're talking about here is we all struggle sometimes with, like, what's a gift idea that will really mean something, that'll really bring a tear to somebody's eye, and this is the perfect one. Now you can give the most meaningful gift you've ever given at Paint Your Life, and there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded, guaranteed. Right now, as a limited time offer, you can get 20% off your painting. That's right, 20% off and free shipping. To get this special offer, text the word problem to 87204. Just the word problem, and you text that to 87204. Once again, text problem to 87204. Paint Your Life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Just text the word problem to 87204 to get 20% off at Paint Your Life. All right, let's get back into the show. Anyway, let's keep playing.
United States to the various laws on the books. We're not making this up. The Alien Enemies Act was actually a federal law. It's a statute enacted by Congress and signed by a president. Now that's under litigation, but put that aside. We still have Title VIII authority to remove illegal aliens from the United States, and we're going to continue to concentrate on those who are the biggest threat to our communities, the public safety threats.
But you're going to abide by court orders as long as, and go through your appeals process, but you are not going to defy those orders.
No.
Okay, let me ask you about the flights at issue here, the flights to El Salvador. You have said that everybody on those flights had ties to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua or to MS-13. Can you give me some background? Help me understand how these people ended up there. Are these people that were recently arrested?
So some were, some weren't. Some have been in custody for a little bit, and some on that plane were Title VIII removals, which means they were ordered removed by the immigration judge, and some other were removed to the Alien Enemies Act. And I think about 240 on that flight were Venezuelan gang members, TDA, and I think we had 21 MS-13 members and a couple, specific MS-13 cases, but as far as the Venezuelans on that flight, every single one, according to the information given to me from the field, are members of the TDA. And TDA has been determined to be terrorist organizations. They're now classified as terrorists. So that plane removed 240 terrorists from the United States.
So how do you determine, or how do your people in the field determine that somebody is a gang member?
Look, there's various methods. No, I've noticed in the media this week, a lot of them don't have criminal histories. Well, a lot of gang members don't have criminal histories. Just like a lot of terrorists in this world, they're not in any terrorist database, right? We only know the information what's in databases based on, for instance, most terrorists we arrest that are identified by the U.S. government are later identified through a Title III investigation or through an undercover operation. They're not in any terrorist screening screening database. We know that. A lot of gang members, I started as a cop in 1984. Many gang members don't have a criminal history. So we have a count of social media. We have a count of surveillance techniques. We have a count on sworn statements from other gang members. We have a count on, wiretaps and Title III. So everything involved with criminal investigations come into play. So just because someone hasn't been arrested and charged with a crime yet, doesn't mean they're a member of a gang.
But how do you? I mean, what we've heard
doesn't mean they are
representing some
let's
of
pause it there. I mean, the obvious problem here is that it also doesn't mean they are a member of a gang. And there is a presumption of innocence, even for people who are here illegally in the country. Maybe not a presumption that they ought to be allowed to stay in the country, but in the same sense that we couldn't just throw them in an American prison, the idea that we could just throw them in a foreign prison does, it seems, and let me just say, well, this guy is good at being kind of like you said, Officer Hardass. And if he's going to be like on a debate against somebody who's arguing for Joe Biden's loose immigration policy, he's probably going to say all the hardcore right things that people want to hear. There's major problems with this. And it's not just, look, there's the first and foremost, it's like, yeah, but like, what if you get the wrong person here? Like you said, Rob, earlier, it's almost a guarantee that at some point you will. And that is the idea of like throwing somebody who doesn't deserve it into one of these prisons on its own is really horrible. And then I would just say, sorry, and then you can go ahead, but then just number two, why I think even like hardcore border restrictionists who support Donald Trump, you should be a little bit concerned about this, because you got to think here, man, like as much as everybody always tells me Donald Trump is playing 4D chess, this is an area where you actually have to play 4D chess to some degree. And look, God forbid there is one or maybe a few of these cases becomes of a high profile example of where you really fucked up. Like, let's say you actually got an American citizen here. You know what I mean? And like they, whatever, didn't have their papers or fucking they're all tatted up or whatever. Oh my God, the nightmare that's going to be toward the whole project of like deporting illegals and getting border security and all the things that we kind of all want to see. You got to be really careful with this one here, man, because if you got like, I mean, the nightmare of the PR, if you like got an American citizen and had them tortured in one of these jails somewhere, that is really not going to be good. So yeah, this makes me a bit uncomfortable. I think it's something that Trump supporters would be wise to consider the risks associated with a policy like this.
And what he's really explaining here are suspected gang members.
Yes.
That would be until you go in front of a judge and you go, here's all the reasons we think this person is in this gang. And it's, well, we actually busted him at the headquarters. The other people testified. Then fine. Now you've got evidence that the guy's in a gang. And then the next layer to that is that's the problem with these terror designations, is that once you label a group as being terrorists, and in this case, I still think of terrorists as being, they belong to Al-Qaeda. They came into this country and they're trying to blow up our buildings. I'd like to hear a little bit more clarification on why Venezuelan gang members are considered terrorists now. Now, you might say that they're undermining our society through drug trade, or that the Venezuelan government specifically wanted to deposit violent criminals here. But just the fact that you can throw in the terror designation and then go, well, you just belong to this group. Are you the DJ there? Do you deliver the, what is that? At the beginning of this, he said affiliated with the group or ties to the group. So what does that mean? You were the accountant for them? Like,
or your brother's in the gang or something like that. I mean, like yeah, it's just it's very vague. We got to wrap up here in a second, but I do think like this type of like, look, we've been saying this from before the election results came in. It's like, this is where things are going to get dicey, and this is going to be a real test for Donald Trump. And in the same way that, look, again, I'll end on this, but I know I've made this point before, but Martin Luther King, okay, in the Civil Rights Act, the entire thing was performative. And I don't mean this as a knock necessarily. It's just a fact of history. But like, they chose Birmingham, Alabama. They decided to go there because they knew what the reaction was going to be. And they knew they were going to get it on television. And there were millions of white Americans, including many who harbored prejudice of their own. Like many people who still believed in segregation, many people who did not believe in the goals of the civil rights activists. But when they looked on TV and saw, black men in suits and ties getting chased down by like police dogs and fire hoses turned on them, they were just like, no, we can't support that. Like we just can't support this level of violence against people. Now, it's much easier when you see people tatted up, from head to toe. You don't even want to know. Like in the same way that Martin Luther King would have his guys wear suits and ties. There's a reason for that. And there's a reason why when you see a guy with face tattoos, you go, I don't know, he's a criminal of some sort. Fucking throw him in jail, whatever, But look, in 2017, even though it was all bullshit and the facilities were built by Obama and half of the pictures were taken under Obama, the kids in cages thing really did radicalize and mobilize a lot of Trump's detractors. And it's just something that, number one, whenever you're using violence, and even when it's state violence, you always want to be careful about it because you don't want to fucking, use it on people who don't deserve it, because that's a bad in and of itself. But it would also, it's like, you got to really pay attention to like how this is going to be perceived and how this could end up backfiring. And the truth is that as furious as Americans were under about Joe Biden's immigration policies, there is a level of violence that the American people will not tolerate. And you want to be really careful about flirting with that. All right, I do have to wrap up there.
I think it might even be worth playing without commentary, but the next part is he does get questioned directly on what was the due process, and essentially says there was no due process, but the Americans that have been victims of gang members, what due process did they have? Which
and he says, what did Larkin Rose? What due process did she have? And you're like, wait, what? That's not what due process is. Like, that's not. And by the way, I believe her killers were convicted of murder. They did have due process, and they did. It's like, yes, no, murder victims don't get due process. It's the reason why we oppose murder. Just so we're all on the same page, right?
You can't just throw Muslims in jail after 9/11 and go, well, what the victims of 9/11, what due process do they have? Well, the answer is we got to make sure that these are the people that actually perpetrated the crime. Otherwise,
yeah, look,
you just have a mechanism for free people being in jail or innocent people being in jail.
Whether you're for the death penalty or not, right? There's good reasons on both sides of that issue. Forget where you stand on that. We all recognize there's a difference between that and the state just killing somebody, right? Like, there's a difference between those two things. And we insist that there is due process, that you get a conviction of this person before you do that. That's why it's a crime if you don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Larkin Rose, am I saying that name right? That's her name, right? Lakin, whatever. So I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just bad with names. But like, had she been convicted of murder in the first degree and then killed, it would be a different story than when she's just some innocent girl and gets killed. That's the whole point. So anyway, like, yes, to your point, it's just a non-answer. He essentially just had no answer for that. And essentially the answer is that they don't get due process. That is an issue. All right, got to wrap up there. Catch you guys next time. See you in Boston this weekend. ComicDaveSmith.com for those